Ray, I thought it was funny when I was watching the show Wednesday night. Had just posted your column the day before. Went back and I put the YouTube links to the matches, so got me nostalgic for some of those matches. There was a lot of commonality between your top five and the top five that they aired. They I don't know if they only aired five matches clips, but they aired a lot of clips during the show. Great matches from Dynamite over 5 years. There were a lot of matches that you picked that they picked as well, it seemed like to me.
You know, when I was a kid growing up, I couldn't afford a lot of pay-per-views. My dad just wouldn't allow it in the allowance. So, I'd watch Raw and SmackDown, and I just wish there was better wrestling on those shows. For so long, we've been indoctrinated by the evil empire that television wrestling is a certain thing, at least people of my generation. And Dynamite has been such a welcome change to that dichotomy that you can have really, really great wrestling on free television. Is anything free anymore in that regard, especially Turner, but it's so hard to get those on streaming services. But yeah, I mean, you know, um, they know what matches are great. They know what matches have been really defining for that show. So it was nice to feel vindicated in that regard. But
I talked about when we were talking about the show beforehand. We said we'd start with reviewing the show, but I kind of want to go back real quick to those some of those matches you picked out. Um, and we'll start 5-1 maybe. That's a good way to do it. Um, Five greatest matches done in my history. Your number five was from 2021 Holiday Bash, CM Punk, Sting, Darby Allin versus MJF and FTR. I mean, you don't have to say much more than the names of the people in the match to talk about how good this match was back in 2021.
I am a devout CM Punk fan. I've been a fan since I was a kid, and I've been a big Sting fan since I was a little kid. So when I was growing up, that was we talk about dream matches. To me, a dream match is a match you don't think can happen. And to me, that was a dream match to see them team up together. So Holiday Bash 2021, night one, just seeing those two together was like the creme de la creme for me. But then you throw in Darby Allin, FTR, MJF. If you read my columns every week, you know that those are six of my favorite wrestlers in AEW. Obviously, withstanding Punk at this point, but yeah, I just to me that is six-man tag wrestling at its finest. When you just have this sort of Justice League of a roster of guys working together, or wrestling in this case. But
Reminds me too that FTR, they've been versatile. They've been faces for so long, but they were heels back then, and teaming with MJF, that had forgotten about that era almost because of how long they've been faces. Now we move to number four, FTR versus the Young Bucks from Dynamite 131 in 2022. One of these two groups, memorable matches and dream matches. I mean, back when uh, the FTR finally made the move over from WWE to AEW. We look forward to these two teams meeting up, and we've seen them a few times now.
you made a great segue. This is right at that interstice where they were still in the pinnacle, but they were slowly turning babyface. They weren't exactly agreeing with what MJF was doing. And I think this match, you could really lock it down to this point where they turned because they were still sort of heels. And then they wrestled the Young Bucks, who were definitely heels, and they looked so much better exiting it as baby faces. It's hard to hate FTR. They just love professional wrestling so much. And I think that's why they've become so popular in the last, I guess, 2.5 years now since they turned face. They're fan favorites. And this is, I mean, not as good as their first match, but very great.
So now we're going to go to the top three matches are going to be singles matches with the company's top stars, and it's hard to really say between one, two, and three that
Yes.
there's a lot of separation here. But we'll go with three: Hangman Adam Page, Bryan Danielson, Winter is Coming 2021. I remember this one. Like it was yesterday.
Yeah. You and I, coincidentally, were both not together, but we were both at the show in Norfolk where Adam Page returned to Virginia with the title and had that face to face. I was sitting in the not on the floor, but in the front row of the bleachers, and someone took a picture of me on TV between them both. And it's something that that picture means a lot to me. But to see those two have that hour-long draw, Danielson had not been pinned or submitted yet in AEW. Um, what a titanic clash! It went a long way into making Hangman Page look like a true champion, true world's champion. And really, that was the highlight of his title reign. I mean, after that Brian Danielson feud, it really went downhill. But that match was so fantastic. I know you're a big Cornette fan. I remember he gushed over it. He said it was the best TV match he had seen in I mean years since he was involved in the business, probably. Yeah, that was a fantastic match.
And it set up the next one between these two when they had another hour time limit. It was maybe a month later, a
Yes.
couple of weeks later, something like that. And they had an hour time limit, and then Page won in like 30. It was after the 30-minute mark, maybe. But they used this match, great match in itself, to train us and swerve us in a few
Yeah.
weeks. I like that too. All right, let's head number two. Will Ospreay, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, July 17th, 2024. Not that long ago.
No.
But yeah, this is another one. This is one just like, I mean, this one didn't quite go 60 minutes. It went 59 minutes and 58 seconds, if I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't want to exhaust the phrase before, but a lot of hour-long matches, you can tell someone's going in and out. The way they reserve themselves, it eventually it becomes clear they're going to go Broadway, go an hour. Um, just like the Hangman versus Danielson match, this match was a marathon, but the pace was fast. I mean, these are an Olympic level marathon between these two. Um, and what really amazes me, it speaks to the testament of this match, is they did so much, and yet they left something on the table for their rematch at All In. I I love MJF and I love Will Ospreay, and to see sort of the brightest young babyface and the brightest young heel share that stage for nearly an hour was incredible. And maybe I'm a prisoner of the moment. Maybe that match should not be above Hangman versus Danielson, but it is what it is, and I enjoyed it a lot.
Only thing I'm jealous of is that so that show was in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I think that's right. And then a couple weeks later, I was at the most recent Norfolk show,
Yeah,
and we didn't get Will Ospreay, Maxwell Jacob Freeman for almost an hour. Um, but one other thing I love with the booking of this is, again, we're trained to think, as you noted. I mean, at a certain time, if they get past a half hour, okay, maybe this one's going Broadway. It's going an hour. Especially they started the show with this match, and so that's also something that Tony Khan has done in the past. Hey, I want to start the show with this match to give it the full length, so that if I started the match at 9 o'clock, you might think it's going to go an hour. I want you to have to guess with me on this,
yeah,
but then we get to the last few seconds, and MJF gets to win. So here we are thinking, oh, it's going to go a draw, and
yeah.
then we get a pinfall. So totally out of left field. Love that part of the booking as well. All right, so number one, and I remember just, when this match was announced back in 2021 for Grand Slam, Brian Danielson, Kenny Omega. I was like the crowd. I remember the live crowd when the bell rang and the two guys were standing on opposite sides of the ring from each other, and the crowd in New York City's already chanting, "This is awesome."
Yeah,
Just the idea of Brian Danielson and Kenny Omega at this time. I mean, this is a few years ago now. Omega's still not that far off from being the number one wrestler in the world in the PWI 500. Brian Danielson being Brian Danielson,
yeah.
just the anticipation of this was as good as the actual match, which was great.
I could write a novella about this match. These guys had wrestled a handful of times in the 2000s, in the late 2000s, in PWG and in Ring of Honor, which are worth looking up. But that nothing compares to the quality that this match brought. 20,000 people in Arthur Ashe Stadium. And I've been going back and watching these old WrestleManias. We're specifically up to 7 so far. And some of those WrestleManias didn't have a crowd this big. I mean, in New York, this was just what a feat for AEW. I know TNA only had one crowd over 10,000, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think it was in America. So, I could argue this was you could argue this is sort of the pinnacle of AEW, the peak that it's reached in terms of the momentum it had. The show did over 1 million views, and the match was fantastic. Danielson going from WWE, where he had that great program with Roman Reigns, right to AEW, still in the world title picture, made Kenny Omega look fantastic. Not that he really needs it, but he made him look that much better. This is, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat this match on television.
And Brian Danielson, now he's the world champion in AEW finally after all these years, but he spent the first 3, 4 years that he was there elevating other guys. And as you mentioned, to a lot of people of us, Kenny Omega didn't need to be elevated, but to a certain segment of the audience that did not have the history with New Japan Wrestling, PWG back in the day, Ring of Honor, he needed some extra legitimacy, and Brian Danielson could do that. And so Danielson, ultimate team player, CM Punk when he was in AEW, same way. But they would put guys over, or in this case, this was a draw, so there was no putting over, but there was elevation going on there, and Danielson played that role in two of these three matches we talked about. So